Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and reporting back on day five of my Germany trip, the fourth proper day. So, and this day I just hung out in Cologne. So, if you're going to go and stay in the city, you might as well spend one day in it. And although I've been to Cologne before on the van trip, it was very much a fleeting visit. It was just having a look around the cathedral mostly, which of course I've been to again as well. And so, yes, that was what I'd come to do. And what I decided to do, well, I went straight away to the tourist information in the morning after I'd had my breakfast, and I said, what do you do? And they gave me various ideas. But the one that stood out is that there are these churches called the 12 Romanesque churches of Cologne. And I thought, well, I'd quite like to see them, or at least some of them. Because I like churches, and I particularly like very old churches, and Romanesque is probably my favourite style of church architecture. And because they were all dotted around the old city, I thought, well, you know what? By walking around them, I'll also see a lot of the old city as well. So, started off by the cathedral, because that's where the tourist information centre was. And my first of the 12 was the church, the Gross St. Martin. Gross means big, so I'm not sure if that's the Church of St. Martin the Great or the big St. Martin Church. But either way, that was it. And it is a big church. And it was constructed around the year 960 on Roman foundations. All of these churches sadly got very damaged during the war. So what they would have been before the war is probably incredible. And we've lost so much. I mean, the tragedy of war is really clear when you look at the lost history of Germany. So the war was our fault, but it doesn't matter. History belongs to the world, and when it's destroyed, it's destroyed. That said, clouds have silver linings, and what I've found out about a lot of these is when they were rebuilt after the war, a lot of the later Gothic or Baroque extensions or roofs were replaced by ones like Romanesque ones, more like the original. So in some way we have purer churches, but they're a lot more modern, and the interiors are often quite stark. And this one, the interior is quite stark, but what was great about it was the crypt. Because if you went down the crypt, I think you had to pay an extra euro or something to do so, you could see the foundations upon which the church was built. And of course, Cologne was a Roman city. The name comes from colony, and it was built, on Roman foundations. I think it was first like a sports complex, and then that was knocked down and something else was built there, like a warehouse, because it was actually on an island in the river at the time, and then now it's sort of a few meters from the river and not on an island anymore. But really interesting to see the Roman foundations underneath the main church. So that was Gross St. Martin. And then I walked through the Altstadt, the old city, to St. Maria in Liskirchen. And that one established in the year 948, but the actual current building dates from 1210 to 1220. And it's the best preserved of them all, so it's much smaller, and also because it's the best preserved, it's probably the least Romanesque, because obviously it's got the Gothic additions and stuff. But there are some incredible paintings inside, and in the most original interior, and I found it really nice. What I also liked was a statue of Our Lady, which is called the Siemens Madonna, and it was a really powerful example of a local cult. And of course, right next to the river, so the not seamen, but like the sailors would have come in and, paid their respects there. And that was great. Then I walked on to St. George, and St. George, an 11th century church, again, much destroyed during the war, quite stark inside, but it was an interesting design, a very squat tower at the end, quite a large one. That was from the 11th century. And then I went on to what some people regard to be one of the finest, the Basilica of Saint Maria in Capitol. And the name comes because it was built on top of a Roman temple, and the Capitol Triad. It was dedicated to 3 Roman gods, and it has 3 naves. Because back in the Roman times, I think there was a different part of the temple for each god. And then, of course, it got transformed into a church. It has a wonderful crypt, and I prayed in there. But what was also very interesting about it is its original wooden doors. They're no longer acting as doors, but they're preserved, and they are incredible carved wooden doors. And also, it was part of a monastery, and the cloister exists, so still outside, and that's quite pleasant. So that gives it a bit of a different feel. Again, affected by the war, but still a very nice church. And then I got to Saint. Well, I'm not sure how you pronounce this. I think in English it would be Cecilia, but is it Kekilian or that church, 1130 to 1160 it was built. That's unique, and it's the only one that is no longer a church. And it actually holds a museum of religious art. And so I paid to go in that, and I had a look at the religious art. Obviously, again, not much interior, but it's very powerful because it's full of religious art from everywhere else. But of course, because that was a museum, I spent much longer in there. That was the last one, so I only did 5 of the 12. But I said, well, I'll go and do another one the following day, and then I've done half. And then the idea is to come back to Cologne one day and do the other 6. So that's that. Really enjoyed it, but I was a little bit footsore because there's quite a lot of walking involved, and I wanted to go back to the cathedral, to the Dom, because although I'd been to Mass there before, Cologne Cathedral is famous. Well, I mean, it's famous because it's the most incredible Gothic cathedral in the world, but it is also famous because it is the shrine of the 3 kings, or the 3 wise men. And, as if by chance, I'd always wanted to be one of the 3 kings in the school nativity plays, and I always got to be a shepherd or something boring. And I turned up at Draycott Church just before Christmas, and they did like a kids service, and they said, will you be one of the 3 kings? So for the first time in my life, I got to dress up as one of the Magi, the 3 wise men, in church, and I thought, well, isn't that fitting? Only a few days before I finally achieved my dream, only a few days before I go and pay homage to the 3 wise men. Of course, I mean, whether the 3 wise men, I mean, they may even be mythological figures anyway. And so whose bones are in that incredible reliquary, the Lord alone knows. But it is a very ancient shrine, and it was one of the biggest shrines in medieval Christendom. And so I went in. Before, I hadn't been able to get at it. You can only get near it at certain times. But I went in because ultimately, I've always found the 3 wise men very interesting because they were pilgrims. They were interfaith pilgrims. So they were Magi, Zoroastrian priests and seers. And so, they would have travelled across the deserts from what is today Iran to Bethlehem to pay homage to a figure from a different tradition. And I can relate to that because I've been to Varanasi, I've been to, Muslim shrines and Buddhist shrines, and I think we can find God in all traditions. And so I feel an affinity to them, and I like the fact that they're quite mystical. So I went and I sat by the shrine and meditated for a good time, and it was a strange experience because I thought I was the only one doing that. There was no obvious place to pray, so I just sat on the floor. And it was like, I was reminded a bit of in the Pakistani Sufi shrines, because I did that there, and everybody's going past and looking at it and doing their thing and then going. And it's very strange to sit and just be and to contemplate and reflect in a place where everybody else is on the move. And I just thought it was so much a comment on our times that Cologne Cathedral is not set up for pilgrims, it's set up for visitors. So there were people from other religions, there were people from, all over the world and all over Germany, and none of them was really there to pray. They were all there to take photos and to say they'd been there, which of course is what I did when I first went all those years ago. But it was a strangely powerful experience to sit and just be by the Three Wise Men. And I wrote a poem while I was there before then heading back to my hotel. And that was the end of my 5th day in Germany. It's me, Uncle Travelling Matt, saying as always, keep travelling.